පත මොහුගේ ඉදිරි සියලු කටයුතු on the facts and sharp එරඩි ඔලි බරපු ජනප්‍රියතම ක්‍රීඩාවට
a single point
Zambia what is out of the team for domination වයිලා මොකද දන්නවද කියලා FA Cup champions
Hello and welcome to the breakdown. It's a post-Bradby breakdown. We're talking about that game in length, but we've had a good weekend of rugby apart from that as well. Probably the closest and best game of the season so far that we had between Kingswood and Joes. And to talk about all that and more, we have a very old friend of mine who has made it to the Bradby after many years. Good to have you back. 20 years since you played in the same encounter. Ravindu Athakorale.
Thank you. Look, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be on ThePapare.com. Easily Sri Lanka's best sports platform, and yes, it's great to be back. And first time I've watched a Bradby as a whole match since I last played back in 1998. So
wow.
It was a surreal feeling, and to come back to the same ground, which was nothing like what it is now, where we trained day in day out, to see the stands, the atmosphere, it was incredible. And I was just blown away at what Bradby has turned out to be, and how much passion there is amongst fans. It's incredible.
Things really have changed. I mean, it has been 2 decades and Schools Rugby has taken quantum leaps forward or backwards. I don't know. We'll discuss that in a moment. St. Joseph's versus Kingswood, a really tight game. 26 points to 22. In the end, to St. Joseph's came through and won that game after trailing 22-19 with about 65 minutes on the clock. They went behind for the first time with 65 minutes, and a good composure shown back to come and win that game in the end.
Yeah, I thought the Josephians had more structure, and they had more finish to, or more application to all their movements, whereas Kingswood were very much ad hoc and hot potato. On their day had things gone their way, and those balls which they dropped stuck, they could have easily won that game. However, they didn't really have a structure to fall back on, and St. Joseph's, they were patient, they pounced on the errors, and they went for the kill.
And that old adage of teams being most vulnerable after they've scored proved true even at the final moments of the game, because Kingswood was celebrating. They thought they'd won the game with 4 minutes to go, and St. Joseph's exploited it.
Yeah, I mean, especially after that shot at goal. I mean, it really sparked the game into life. I was watching it live, and I was up and I was cheering, and it was very lively. However, as you said, they probably got a bit carried away, and they really didn't know what or how to structure the plays after that, retain possession and use the ball. Whereas they made a couple of errors, St. Joseph's pounced on it, and they went for the killer blow.
Yep, Keshan Kavinda scoring a hat-trick there as well, which was really good for his team. Superb finishing from him. There was plenty to do when he got the ball for most of those tries, and he did that very well. Isipatana versus Wesley, that game I thought was going to be a try-fest. It ended up being exactly that, but in 2 different halves. Isipatana being dominant in the first half, and Wesley suddenly realizing that their backs could play rugby and coming through in the end. The occasion of playing the rugby giants, Isipatana, the young team, didn't quite front up in the first 20 minutes, and as a result of that had to sacrifice that game. 17 of those points for Wesley coming in the second half. St. Peter's with a convincing win as we expected. DS scored first, but that was the only scoring they did. That match ended up 43 points to 7. DS needed to get 2 bonus points out of that game to put the pressure on Zahira. Didn't manage to do that, and Zahira beating Dharmaraja fairly convincingly as well, ensuring that they go through into the next round. But the big game that we all want to talk about is the Bradby Bua, and unfortunately we've had lots of controversy over forward passes, TMO decisions and all that, and part of me says that's because the rugby on the day didn't quite live up to the billing.
Partially, yes and no in my view. Royal were very good at controlling the game. They just allowed the game to sort of fan out the way they wanted to, and when they saw an opportunity, they really put the foot down. They got the points on the board, and they didn't expend too much energy in doing so, especially how they didn't create a ruck or contest the breakdown. They stood back, waited for the opponents to come up, fanned out, and they targeted maybe the third or fourth ruck where Trinity were vulnerable, and they turned the ball over. As far as controversy goes, well, I mean, I saw that supposed forward pass. You know, the due process was followed by the referee. The referee wasn't sure. He took it upstairs. The TMO asked him, Tony Amit, you know, very, very experienced operator, for his assistance. And Tony obviously viewed the footage on the angles available, and there was no conclusive evidence to suggest that the ball had moved forward. Obviously, there's been a few screenshots circulating in social media from the one angle available. So it really depends on how you see this. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty?
Yeah.
So
what we can agree on is that the angle is not the optimal one to view it on.
absolutely, absolutely. And look, and if anyone is having a whinge and a moan about it, all I got to say is harden up, move on, let's focus on the rugby.
Yeah, let us focus on the rugby, and that one thing Royal has done well is what you spoke about. They don't attack every ruck, but they wait until the opponents are vulnerable, until one player gets slightly isolated, and then the second man goes in. It's a very well practiced technique.
Yeah, look, I had the privilege of watching these guys train last Wednesday. Hopped off a flight and came straight into the Royal Sports Complex, and they had a practice game against a much senior armed forces side. It was a very well simulated defensive game. And what I saw Royal do on Saturday against Trinity was exactly what they did on Wednesday. So they were very consistent in taking that preparation from Wednesday to Saturday, and pretty much everything they did was carbon copy. So that told me that there was a lot of preparation. Coach Leuke was being very strategic. And also, I'll go one step further. Last year, when Royal did a tour of Auckland in New Zealand, they spent a lot of time with some very quality coaches working through these defensive structures. So that's really paid off. And I think Coach Leuke has really drilled every single player, both in the squad as well as the wider training group, as far as the technique of, you know, maintaining your body position, not contesting the ruck. Because again, you have to understand, if there is no ruck, it's open play. Therefore, you can have a go at the ball. But they didn't do that. They didn't commit too much energy. They were so confident of their systems and processes. And Trinity, they just looked completely lost as this defensive wave after wave came at them, and they just turned the ball over.
Yeah, we've seen Royal perhaps functioning on cruise control this season, Bua, and as a result of it, I think they're maybe not getting as much scores as they could do, because I think the best game they played so far is probably the second half against St. Thomas's, where they completely cut loose. They looked like they were relaxed, they looked like they wanted to have fun, and maybe a little bit more of that in the second leg, you think?
Yes, I think so, because, you know, Trinity are spotting Royal 32 points. Now, in my view, and most people would agree, you know, the shield is as good as gone. In the extremely unlikely event, like, you know, when you get in a plane and they give you a safety briefing, in the extremely unlikely event, something like that's got to happen if Royal are to lose the shield. So I think what Royal will do, and also keep in mind, this is not a league fixture. 20 years ago, we never focused on the league. For us, it was all about the Bradby. And traditionally, the Bradby, the two games were the last games. So you built up a whole bunch of momentum and a whole bunch of steam, and you focused on that. Whereas this, you know, it's not a league game. And I think there's, Coach Leuke is probably not going to show or give Trinity too much respect. And I think they're just going to go for it. And they will be very, very ruthless. Now, Trinity, they can't be sulking on this. They've got to come and, you know, throw everything they have at Royal and get the points on the board. Preferably lots and lots of tries. And I guess the best they can do, based on what I've seen against this highly skilled Royal side, is just do a bit of damage control.
Yeah.
So we hope for that.
Isn't it time to grow up? Now you can with current accounts from DFCC Bank. DFCC Bank. Keep growing.
6 tries to 1, so they're going to have to score plenty more up in Pallekele. Home ground advantage. Coach Lotte Raikambula, if you were in his shoes, it's going to be a long couple of weeks for you.
Look, one thing I got to say is Pallekele is a dimensionally larger ground. Therefore, you got to use the fringes, the left wing and the right wing. So Trinity, they will have to chance their arm. From the word get-go, they need to throw the ball around. Now, if you noticed, there were a few instances Trinity looked threatening and they just disrupted the Royal defensive structures where when they pushed it wide, there was the odd missed or slipped tackle. So I think Rakabula, he's going to have to use some of his sevens exploits and basically give these kids a free license. Say, look guys, if we don't score tries, we're going to lose the shield. So, you know, let's not die wandering.
Yeah, they did use a few cutout passes, but Royals' drift defense again seems to have the measure of that.
Again, it comes down to preparation. I mean, you asked me right on top of the show, how has rugby changed? You know, 20 years ago, we trained 3 times a week. We do fitness Monday, do tactical stuff day after, and then we come back to do, you know, a finishing what you call a captain's run. Whereas now it's a completely different game. These kids eat, sleep, drink, breathe rugby. They have access to better nutrition, you know, better strength training. I think they have a support staff as big as a 15-man team. You know, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of resources being channeled into coaching. So all this, that they can produce better results. And I think what we're seeing is Royal are doing that a lot better than everyone else, and everyone else is just sort of trying to catch up to them. And because Royal have had consistent players and a coaching structure, especially with Loke around, it's starting to pay dividends.
Yeah, it certainly is. It has been paying dividends for a few years as well, and it looks like it's going to be going on for a while as well. If you're looking at their junior teams, a complete whitewash over the Trinity Juniors as well. So it augurs well for Royal Rugby. I'm not sure about the rest of the schools who, as Bua said, are playing catch up. Let's look at where those schools are in the points table. We have Royal College sitting pretty at the top of that Division 1A. St. Joseph's obviously lost to Royal, so that means they concede that top position. They had a scare against Kingswood, who remain in a well-deserved third. Trinity don't move any further up. They are in fourth, and St. Anthony's and St. Thomas's are battling it out in the relegation. That game is coming up a little while later in the week, so we'll have to wait and see whether St. Thomas's will manage to register their first win or whether they will end the season on a duck.
Look at the points table, and you know, the points differential, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work ahead for St. Thomas's.
Certainly a lot of work ahead. St. Peter's in the other half of the draw are again unbeaten there. They're on the identical number of points as Royal, are setting up a nice battle between those two teams. Two former coaches who worked together, Martis and Leuke. How is that going to play out?
Well, I think you could, I mean, if the form stays true, these two teams, looking ahead, should meet each other with an unbeaten tag to what I think is one of the most competitive schoolboy sports leagues around the world. Simple as that.
Wow, most competitive leagues around the world. That's big news coming from a guy who knows what he's talking about, living in Auckland now and seeing how people prepare to make it to the All Blacks from a very young age as well. Bringing up the next positions, Isipathana Wesley, who managed to move themselves up 1 point ahead of Zahira. They're probably a better team than that. Zahira College coming up with 11 points and making sure that they go through to the next round as well. They're safe. DS and Dharmaraja will fall back down with St. Thomas's and St. Anthony's, and they will battle the promoted teams from the lower division, and that should be a very interesting played contest as well. So we have our top try scorer as well, Gamanu Chaithia, who was pushed to fullback in the Joseph's game. Unfortunately couldn't get among the scorers, but his team won. He'll be happy about that. And the second place also, St. Joseph's College, Kavinda Keshan, who scored that hat-trick and moves up to the second place. Bua, nice finishing from him.
Great. I mean, look, all these players, they have some really good talent. And again, it's how the coaching staff of the respective schools utilize them, and it just goes to show that one person in a very competitive league, all it takes is 10-15 minutes of really good rugby, and they score a hat-trick and they're right up there.
Yes,
so it's just about making good use of these resources.
And Janil Dilshan, he's another guy who's in number 3 at the moment after his 2 tries on the weekend to add to his fastest try in the Bradby from last year. Special player, isn't he?
He's a very special player, and I must admit, calling the Bradby, he was pretty much the only clear-cut name I knew based on the information provided to us on the team sheets. Yeah, look, he's destined for much bigger and better things, and having played club rugby while playing school, I can tell you that this boy he's ready. There's no question. I think he can walk into any top club side in Sri Lanka right now, and he's fearless. He's strong, great body position, great acceleration, and also he can pass both ways, which is a real asset for any schoolboy rugby player.
Yeah, not something that's prevalent even in our national team at the moment. Top point scorer Shehan Lianapathirana with 51 points. Dulan Gunawardena, the Royal fullback, missed a couple of kicks over the weekend. He will be a little unhappy about that. 46 points. Ruberu from the Isipatana captain is on 38 points, and Santosh Algama, the Josephian fly half, on 36 points. Great to have you all on the breakdown, and it's even greater to have Royal Bradby winning player and also former CHNFC flanker Bua Atukorala back in Sri Lanka and on the breakdown with us. Thanks very much for joining us, mate.
Thank you, and it's been an absolute pleasure.